It's August 23rd here in Seoul, and I'm Kim Dami. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour, starting with Japan's Fukushima wastewater release. The 3-decade-long process will begin tomorrow, 2 days after the country made the final call on discharge day. The IAEA issued a separate statement to South Korea, promising to provide real-time monitoring data. Ahead of the U.S. Commerce Secretary's visit to China this week, Washington is taking a softer approach to Beijing by removing 27 Chinese firms from its unverified list. And here in South Korea, a nationwide air raid evacuation drill will take place at 2 p.m. this afternoon. For 15 minutes, people and residents must evacuate to nearby shelters, apartment building basements, or subway stations. It's been 12 years since the Fukushima nuclear disaster. And for the next 30 years, Japan will release over 1 million tons of wastewater into the ocean starting tomorrow. Our Peunji leads our coverage this morning.
Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida has said the country will go forward with the release of wastewater on Thursday, August 24th, if they encounter no obstacles. A total of about 1.3 million tons of wastewater will be discharged from the destroyed nuclear power plant in Fukushima into the Pacific Ocean over the next 3 decades. The decision was made after the Japanese government held a cabinet meeting on Tuesday morning to discuss the issue.
As for the specific release date, it is expected to be August 24th, weather and sea conditions permitting.
Announcing the plan, Prime Minister Kishida said he believes there has been support and understanding from a wide range of regions and countries based on scientific evidence from the International Atomic Energy Agency. The IAEA, the United Nations nuclear watchdog, approved the discharge last month, saying that it finds the plans to be consistent with international safety standards. Prime Minister Kishida also asked the operator of the power plant, Tokyo Electric Power Company, or TEPCO, to prepare for the discharge swiftly. In response, TEPCO said it has begun the preparations needed, starting with the transfer of the first batch of treated water from storage tanks into a facility on Tuesday morning. The company said it expects a total of 31,200 tons to be discharged by next March, and explained that this is about 3% of the total amount. TEPCO plans to use a purification system called the ALPS to remove radioactive materials, with the exception of tritium, that's difficult to separate from water. It will then mix with seawater to dilute it before releasing into the ocean through an underwater pipe that's about 1 kilometer long. Japan's latest decision comes just days after the leaders of South Korea, the U.S., and Japan held a historic summit, as Seoul and Tokyo worked to resolve historical disputes and restore ties. Meanwhile, some Japanese media outlets have suggested that the reason Kishida is eyeing an early release within this month is to avoid the fishing season in Fukushima, which begins in September. It's been about 2 years since the Japanese government first announced its decision to discharge the water into the Pacific Ocean as storage space was running out. And it has been around 12 years since the Fukushima nuclear power plant was destroyed by a massive tsunami and earthquake on March 11, 2011. Peunji, Arirang News.
And the South Korean government sees no issues with the wastewater release when it comes to science or technology. But the country remains focused mostly on the safety and health of its people. Choi Min-jang reports.
With Japan set to proceed with the release of Fukushima wastewater as soon as Thursday, the South Korean government has determined that there are no scientific or technical problems with the planned discharge. Speaking at a briefing on Tuesday afternoon, the first deputy chief of the Office for Government Policy Coordination, Park Gu-yeon, stressed that this, however, does not mean that the government accepts or supports the wastewater release.
Our government concluded today that we'll ask Japan to immediately stop the discharge if the actual process goes differently from what was planned, as it would threaten the safety and health of our people.
In order to enhance the transparency and reliability of the disposal, Park said South Korea has consulted with the IAEA and Japan about having Korean experts participate in the on-site inspection operated by the IAEA. The Korean government also asked Japan to immediately stop the release and notify the government if something unusual occurs. Lastly, South Korea has requested the sharing of real-time information for prompter, transparent monitoring. In response, Japan, in coordination with the IAEA, agreed to post relevant data online every hour, with the information provided in Korean as well. To ease concerns, the government announced its future plans aimed at protecting the safety and health of people in Korea.
As we have done so far, our government will focus on the health and safety of the people and respond transparently and promptly, while doing our best to minimize damage to fishers and the fisheries industry.
First, the government plans to significantly expand the scope of monitoring to include the waters near the Pacific Islands and the Northwest Pacific near Japan. Authorities also vowed to expand simulations using actual data obtained after the release to reflect what's really going on. The government has been judging that the impact of the release on domestic waters and marine products will not be significant. This comes as results from various simulations have shown that radioactive substances from the wastewater would flow into Korean waters several years later in a considerably diluted state. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
And for a thorough monitoring of the release, the International Atomic Energy Agency will remain stationed at the plant, providing real-time updates to the international community. The IAEA also issued a separate statement to South Korea, promising to hand over the info regarding the release regularly. Our Shin Ha-young has the details.
The International Atomic Energy Agency will review the situation during and after the discharge of Fukushima wastewater. Following the announcement by the Japanese government on Tuesday, the IAEA published a statement on its website saying that its staff on-site will continue to monitor and assess the activities to ensure their ongoing alignment with safety standards, including on the day of the discharge starting and after. The agency has staff stationed in a Fukushima office that was opened last month, where South Korea will also send its experts. The IAEA experts there will directly observe the process of collecting wastewater samples. While regularly visiting related facilities, they will coordinate discussions between the IAEA and Tokyo Electric Power Company if any changes occur. It also plans to publish data for the use of the global community, including real-time monitoring information. An additional update will be provided as soon as the discharge begins. Unlike the United States, which has been supportive of the discharge, China has criticized Japan's latest decision.
China strongly urges Japan to rectify its wrongful decision and withdraw its plan to discharge nuclear-contaminated water into the sea.
A Chinese foreign ministry spokesperson added that Beijing will take necessary measures to safeguard food safety and the health of its people. Hong Kong Chief Executive John Lee on Tuesday said he strongly opposes the decision, saying the city would immediately activate import controls on Japanese seafood. On the other hand, the European Union last month decided to remove its import restrictions on Japanese food that had been in place since the nuclear accident in 2011. Meanwhile, the environmental organization Greenpeace has criticized Japan's latest decision, arguing that it violates human rights in both Japan and the Pacific region and that it ignores the concerns of people, including fishermen. Shin Ha-young, Arirang News.
The U.S. has urged North Korea to call off its planned launch of a spy satellite, echoing South Korea and Japan's stance by calling the launch unlawful. The State Department spokesperson said Washington is against the launch, saying it violates UN Security Council resolutions that prohibit the regime's use of ballistic missile technology for any purpose, including for a space launch vehicle. Now, launching a satellite requires the same technology as an intercontinental ballistic missile. The remarks come after Pyongyang reportedly notified Japan of its plan to launch a satellite between August 24th and August 31st. So, North Korea has warned that it will shoot for a second launch of what is presumed to be the first spy satellite as early as August 24th, That's tomorrow. For more on the North's latest launch-related moves, we are joined by Mr. Jaakko Zeslut this morning. Welcome to the program.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Sure, Jaakko. So the North may go for the second attempt for its first spy satellite as early as tomorrow or as late as next Thursday. Now, the question is, why this specific period?
Now, believe it or not, but I'm not a rocket scientist. I'm just the host of the NK News podcast. But I was, by doing some reading, I was unable to find any physical or technical reasons why it would choose this period over another. I think that there are potentially a couple of factors to be taken into consideration. And the most important one is that the launch in May was a failure, and that the satellite that fell into the sea is now in the hands of the South Korean government. North Korea wants a military reconnaissance satellite in orbit, and once it has sorted out the technical problems that led the first launch to fail, it is ready to launch again to try to get one up there. From North Korea's perspective, since it doesn't yet have a dedicated military reconnaissance satellite, the sooner it succeeds, the better. And that's probably why it's choosing now. Another factor would be weather and meteorological conditions.
Right. The North Korea, they want the military satellite because it is, if it goes successfully, it will be their first ever version of that missile satellite. Now, can we see the move as an apparent protest against South Korea, U.S. joint militaries that have been going on, or the Camp David Trilateral Summit, or is the North trying to commemorate some kind of major events or anniversaries?
Not necessarily. Certainly, North Korea is disturbed about the combined South Korea-US drills called the Ulchi Freedom Shield that started this week, as well as the optics of the three leaders of Japan, South Korea, and the United States becoming closer and talking about joint security issues at Camp David. But we have to look at the satellite launch as separate from that, because this was going to happen anyway, regardless of drills or summits. North Korea, when it is angry and wants to signal a protest, usually launches missiles, and it does so without warning. This is different because North Korea actually did notify Japan of its intentions to launch a satellite into space, and that's probably because North Korea wants to be seen publicly as a responsible and peaceful user of space. In terms of special days in North Korea, coming up this Friday, the 25th, that is Songun Day, or the Day of Songun, which commemorates the 25th of August 1960, the day that the late Kim Jong-il apparently made an inspection of the Seoul Ryugyong-su Guards 105th Tank Division with his father Kim Il-sung and gave a speech about the military needing to come first. And that is what Songun means, military first. So if the launch is actually on Friday, August the 21st, then we will be able to say in hindsight that it is a significant day, a Songun Day launch, but not before then, because launches can always be affected or delayed by things like weather forecasts.
Right, the launch plan has been on the North to-do list since its first failure back in May.
Yes, they did have some engine problems in May. At the time, North Korea's National Aerospace Development Administration, or NADA, reported that there was, quote, abnormal ignition of the second stage engine, and the new engine system reliability and stability failed, and the fuel used was unstable. Now, according to George William Herbert, who's an adjunct professor at the Center for Non-Proliferation Studies and a missile consultant, this rocket used in May was believed to be fitted with a liquid fuel engine. We know that North Korea has tried some solid fuel missile engines recently, and South Korea's National Intelligence Service reported last week to the National Assembly's Intelligence Committee that it had detected heavy activities at a North Korean facility that produces solid fuel missiles, and also at a site that is related to liquid fueled missiles. North Korea has 4 types of intercontinental ballistic missiles, 3 of which use liquid fuels, and the last one that uses solid fuel. So it remains to be seen exactly what type of rocket it will use to get, this time, to get its satellite into orbit. Now, are they ready? Kim Jong-un and his scientists seem to believe that they are ready. Mr. Kim is a harsh taskmaster, and I'm sure his scientists do not want to disappoint him, and that can add pressure and skew incentives. So let's wait and see if they're actually correct this time.
Yeah, I can imagine how heavy that burden is on those scientists. Now, Yako, if the second attempt is once again unsuccessful, let's say, do you think the North Korea will go for a third attempt, fourth, fifth, and maybe even the 10th? Who knows? And if they do stop, when will they ever stop?
Yeah, now I cannot claim any special insight into Kim Jong-un's mind, but last year, during a visit to the Satellite Control Center of the National Aerospace Development Administration, Kim Jong-un said, "It is the strategic and tactical policy of the party to strictly watch and distinguish the hostile military actions against the DPRK committed by the US imperialist aggression army and its followers in and around the Korean Peninsula." So I believe that North Korea has shown the world again and again that it will spare no resources to get the technology that it wants to make itself feel safe. Because the most common type of satellites orbit around the Earth rather than stay in one place, one satellite will not be enough. So North Korea will want more. So building a network of reconnaissance satellites is a goal of North Korea's security strategy. I don't see any reason why North Korea will stop. You mentioned earlier that the United States State Department called on North Korea to stop its plans. South Korea's foreign ministry yesterday released a statement regretting North Korea's plan to launch a satellite and calling on Pyongyang to cancel it. And the Unification Ministry called it an illegal act. Now, I don't think that the South Korean government believes that North Korea will listen to these statements, and I don't expect it will change the launch plans at all. But I think these are things that governments must say in this situation.
Right. Now, it sounds like the whole spy satellite launch plan is a long-term plan that's just not going to last for a couple of months.
That's right. I think it's going to go on for quite a while there.
All right. Yako, thank you so much for joining us this morning. You have a good day.
Thank you for having me.
Now, in the meantime, Washington has renewed its ban on Americans traveling to North Korea for another year, maintaining a restriction that has been in place since 2017. According to the U.S. State Department on Tuesday, the latest extension comes amid rising tensions over Pyongyang's nuclear and ballistic missile programs, as well as the uncertain status of U.S. serviceman Travis King, who fled to the north last month. Now, the ban will be published in the Federal Register set for release on Wednesday and has been signed by Secretary of State Antony Blinken. The ban will remain in place until August 31st, 2024. The U.S. has made clear that it doesn't want the Chinese economy to tumble, calling on Beijing to be more transparent about the state of its economy. Washington also removed some Chinese entities from its export control unverified list. Lee Seung-jae tells us more.
Last week, the Chinese government stopped the publication of a report on soaring youth unemployment amid concerns the statistics would reveal new weaknesses in the country's recovery. China also cracked down on corporate due diligence firms operating in the country, halting the flow of information to overseas businesses. In response, U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan on Tuesday called on Beijing to be more transparent about the state of its economy. Speaking to reporters in Washington, Sullivan said that for global confidence, predictability, and the capacity of the rest of the world to make sound economic decisions, it's important for China to maintain a level of transparency in the publication of its data. His comments also come as U.S. Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo is set to travel to China at the end of this month for talks with high-level Chinese officials in what seems to be a move by Washington to stabilize relations with Beijing. Raimondo's trip follows a 4-day visit by Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen last month, who held more than 10 hours of meetings with senior officials in Beijing. Meanwhile, in a bid to further normalize bilateral trade with China, the U.S. Department of Commerce announced Tuesday local time that it has removed 27 Chinese entities from its export control unverified list. The Chinese Commerce Ministry welcomed the decision, saying that the move is in line with the common interests of the two sides. The ministry added that solutions that would be beneficial to both countries can be found as long as the two sides follow the principle of frank cooperation and mutual benefit. 이승재, Arirang News.
As part of the ongoing Ulchi Civil Defense exercise, for the first time in 6 years, there'll be a nationwide air raid evacuation drill. At 2 p.m. later this afternoon, an air raid warning siren will sound. Then, for the next 15 minutes, residents must evacuate to a nearby shelter and listen to a radio broadcast. Drivers on designated sections must pull over to the right side of the road. Then the guard alarm will be issued at 2:15, and you can resume moving while maintaining your guard. You can return to normal after the guard alarm is lifted at 2:20. You can find designated shelters on the National Disaster and Safety Portal or on the Emergency Ready app. If there are no shelters nearby, head to a building basement.
Good morning, I'm Matthew Ashley, and we now turn over to stories from around the world. We begin in northwestern Pakistan, where 8 people, including 6 children, were pulled from a cable car in a dramatic rescue. Now, the 12-hour ordeal on Tuesday near the city of Battagram saw 1 child airlifted by helicopter, while the rest were moved to safety by a zip line. Pakistan's army said that rescue efforts were made dangerous and difficult because of windy conditions. The children had been on their way to school when one of the cable car's cables snapped almost 300 meters above a ravine. The cable car is used to cut travel time through a valley from 2 hours to just 4 minutes. Now in Greece's northeast, firefighters fighting a wildfire have discovered the remains of 18 burnt bodies. According to the local fire brigade on Tuesday, the bodies were found by a shack in a remote village near the port city of Alexandroupolis. They are believed to have been migrants who crossed in from Turkey. The Greek border region is a known crossing point for thousands of migrants looking to enter Europe. The discovery comes as a number of wildfires rage in Europe, including in neighboring Turkey, where 6 villages have been evacuated and water traffic was temporarily suspended on the Dardanelles Strait. It also comes amid scorching heat waves in southern Europe that have triggered several red alerts in Italy and France. Now, after months of political suspense and legal maneuvers, Thailand has elected Srettha Thavisin of the Pheu Thai Party as its new prime minister. The real estate mogul was elected in a successful parliamentary vote on Tuesday, supported by a coalition that includes pro-military parties linked to a 2014 coup that installed military-backed rule. An election back in May saw the Progressive Move Forward party win the most votes, but they were blocked from power by conservative senators. Thavisin's election came hours after former PM and fugitive Thaksin Shinawatra returned to the country after 15 years of self-imposed exile. He was immediately arrested and charged with abuse of power and other criminal offences, which he says are politically motivated. Shinawatra is known as the figurehead for the Pheu Thai Party. And finally, a rare spotless giraffe has been born at a private zoo in the U.S. state of Tennessee. It's currently the only one of its kind in the world that we know of. Only one other spotless giraffe born in a Tokyo zoo in 1972 has ever been recorded in history. A giraffe's spots serve as a form of camouflage and aid in thermal regulation. The zoo is now looking to give her a name and has opened an online vote on its Facebook page. People can choose between 4 names: Kepike, Furyali, Shakiri and Jamila. Voting closes on September 4th.
Good morning. Today is Cheoseol, the second autumn seasonal term. Summer heat should subside from now. Today's rain might help to cool things down a bit for western regions. Right now, Jeju is seeing 30 millimeters an hour of heavy rainfall, and these rain clouds will gradually expand to western regions. The capital area in Gangwon-do province could see more than 150 millimeters of downpours. The rest of the country could see up to 120 millimeters into tomorrow. A heavy rain advisory has been issued for some of the northern central regions. That's including here in Seoul and Jeollado provinces. Rain brings heat relief, but eastern regions will have a scorcher under sunny skies with passing rain in the afternoon. The east will see rain mainly tomorrow. Strong winds could blow in Jeju and coastal regions of Jeollado provinces, and afternoon highs will be 1 to 5 degrees lower this afternoon. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
We thank you for watching New Day at Arirang. We'll be back tomorrow for Thursday's edition at the same time. Until then, goodbye.